Mark died unexpectedly on a fishing trip. 60 days later, the business he spent 20 years building was worth nothing. I'm Chris McClure, and for the past 30 years, I've seen what happens to businesses when the owner suddenly isn't there anymore. And it's not usually pretty. Your business isn't just an asset without a plan, it's really a ticking time bomb. David called me after his brother Mark died of a heart attack on a fishing trip. Mark had built a successful construction company. He had 185 employees. He had $32 million in annual revenue, no debt, great contracts. Everything looked solid from the outside. But Mark was everything. He was the rainmaker. He was the estimator. He was the relationship guy. He also made all the decisions. And so when he died, the business really had no succession plan. It had no buy-sell agreement, and no one had signing authority except for Mark. So within 60 days, they lost 3 key employees who got nervous about their jobs. They quit because Mark wasn't there anymore. Unfortunately, the bank froze their line of credit, and no one could legally sign documents. And because of that, a $12 million contract fell through because the client didn't trust the leaderless team to deliver. So unfortunately, the business that was worth millions became worthless in a couple of months. And David's words, they still stick with me. We didn't just lose Mark, we lost everything he spent 20 years building. And it happened so fast that we couldn't stop it. Businesses don't fail because they're unprofitable. They fail because they're completely dependent on one person. On the other hand, Sarah ran a specialty food company. She had $55 million in revenue and 140 employees. She came to us with a simple request. I want to make sure if something happens to me, this business is going to keep going. And so we worked together to build what she called her hit by a bus plan. Not a formal succession plan, just a clear roadmap of what happens if she's suddenly not around. We updated her operating agreement so someone else could legally run the business. We identified which employees could handle key relationships during a transition. And we made sure her family wouldn't be forced to sell the business just to pay estate taxes. And more importantly, we actually documented everything. We documented who has authority, where the key relationships are. We also documented how decisions get made without Sarah. And so unfortunately, a couple of years later, Sarah had a stroke. And the business, it didn't skip a beat. Of course, everyone was sad and they were worried about Sarah, but her operations manager stepped in. The bank relationship stayed intact and customers barely noticed the transition. And her family, her husband and her kids, they had time to breathe and they had time to think and time to grieve without scrambling to save the company. Now, luckily, and the really good news is that Sarah recovered fully, but she told me something that captures why this really matters. She says, I always thought business planning was about growing my company, right? Making it bigger. I never realized it was also about protecting my family. So if you've built a business that depends on you showing up every day, you really haven't built an asset. You've built a job that unfortunately dies with you. And if you've built something valuable and you want to make sure it stays that way, there's a link below that you can schedule a call to talk to me. I really do love making these and I hope you'll join me on the next one.